BookTube, it's Tara, and this is Friday Reads for July 24th. I won't be giving any ratings on any books right now. I'm going to wait until the end of the month when I do my wrap up. I got my coffee. It has been a long day today. But first book I finished thus far this month is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is an African-American male. This is a memoir. Let me start there. Told by a young black gay man, and basically his coming of age story. I know I did say in my review, I stated that he navigates love, trust, insecurities, and fearlessness honestly. He is bold, funny, and downright graphic in this book, so I enjoyed it. I think it's a great read. The next book that I finished this month is a book called 32 Candles, written by Ernessa T. Carter. I love this book. This follows a young, dark-skinned girl who is so dark that her peers at school call her Monkey Knight, and she is obsessed with Molly Ringwald of 16 Candles and some other movies, and she wants to pattern her life after this Molly Ringwald character. And it is kind of loosely told around that premise, although this story is a lot darker. There's a lot more heavy topics in this story. Her life is not a fantasy at all. The gist of the story is her being in love with this young man named James Farrow, who comes from a black family of money. So she is head over heels in love with this young man who in the beginning doesn't know she exists, but toward the middle of the book they come into contact again as they're older, and the story just, it goes like this the entire time. It's like something great happens, but then tragedy, you know, so it's always on a roller coaster with this book. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think you'll like it too if you're into the what's going to happen next. Is she going to get out of this situation? Is she going to come back from that devastating thing that just happened to her? If you're into that, you would like this book. The next book I finished was The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. Okay, so this story follows a young biracial boy living in the UK, and it starts off his life around the age of 5, and we go up until I want to say he's a young adult. This book reminds me so much and is on the same vein, in my opinion, as The Poet X, because it was lyrically told. It does have poetry in it, and I think a good majority of the book is told in poetry and is told in prose. We follow his life and his adventures with love, with his family, with his schoolmates, and just how he navigates that and tries to figure out life for himself, what it means to be black, or what it means to be biracial, what it means to be gay, the whole nine. The next book I finished was a book called The People Who Could Fly. This is a picture book written by Virginia Hamilton, and this follows African folklore about how slaves that came over from Africa had the ability to fly, but their black wings were clipped when they became slaves over here in the Americas. But if they said a special phrase or a special set of words, they could regenerate that power within them to get off of those fields and fly far, far away from here. It was short. I really enjoyed it for what it was. I also picked up and finished a small novella written by Ava Freeman called Four Letter Word, and this is a story about two young working adult women who are secret lesbians, and a romance that ensues from there. The story in itself was cute. I don't have too much to say about it. I mean, you know, these two girls meet at work. They really like each other. There's this passionate affair that they have. There's a misunderstanding, you know, so they fall out, but then I don't want to give it away. It was cute. The next book I finished was Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by 50 Cent, aka Curtis Jackson. This is a self-help book / memoir by 50 Cent. I did learn and pick up some new ideas and some bits of wisdom. He goes over things, I'm reading my notes, such as, you know your worth, then add tax. Don't be afraid to compete. Learn from your L's or your losses. Comfort is a dream killer. Avoid the entitlement trap. Take full responsibility for your life. Read more books. Yes, he said that. This was a good book for what it was. I think this is more geared toward leadership positions. If you are a person that is driven to establish an entrepreneurship, or someone who is driven to be the head at your company, just some nuggets that, you know, he drops from personal experiences and things that he's learned in his journey in his life, and he read it himself. I listened to it on Libby, so that was entertaining. That's all I could say about that. Next book I finished was Barracoon by Zora Neal Hurston. This is the story of the last black cargo, or the last living African slave. This was an unpublished book by Zora Neale Hurston, and it became published after her death, is my understanding. And it follows the story of a man named Cujo Lewis, his life as an African, and it takes you from him being in Africa, what happened when he was put on the ship, what happened when he was taken off the ship, his few years he lived as a slave, and then his life thereafter. So I guess this is one of the many or few accounts that we have of that entire process. Africa, ship, here. The dialect of this book was written such that Zora Neale Hurston tried to keep his broken language authentic. It wasn't anything that you could not understand, though. It was well told. I think she did a great and excellent job at keeping his story simple and not adding her influence into it. She told this story as it was being told to her through Cujo, and that's what I enjoyed most about this narrative. So, excellent account, excellent book. I really liked it. And if you're into history, this is one that is worth the read. Next book I finished was a graphic novel called Bingo Love. This is a love story between two, well, one is African American and the other lady in the book is Hispanic. It's about two ladies who met way back in the 1950s, I want to say, when they were young in school, and they fell in love with each other, but their parents found out, and back in the 1950s, they don't do homosexuality like that. So the Hispanic girl, Marie, was sent down south, and then Elle stayed up north. Eventually, they went on to marry men and have families. And then later on in life, like in their 50s, I want to say, 60s, they meet again. It's cute. It's a love story. That's all I can really say. They meet as little girls. They go their separate ways. They come back together in the end. It's cute. So next book I finished, I read a lot this month, is an anthology called Black Enough. Stories of being young and black in America. This is by far one of the better anthologies that I have read. Every story in this book, with the exception of maybe two, I thoroughly enjoyed. The one story I enjoyed the most, though, was a story called Whoa. But it follows a young boy in present day who is in college, and he gets gifted from his grandmother this bowl or Dutch oven that he uses to steam his face with. So as he's putting the hot water in and the herbs and everything, and he's going to cover up his head so he can steam his face, he looks down in the water and he sees another face looking back up at him. The face looking back up at him thinks he's a devil, and it turns out he ends up having a conversation with a slave. And the conversation that these two have between each other, excuse the noise in the background, my son's computer. The conversation that these two have with one another is fun, and it's enlightening because the slave can't believe the things that this young boy is telling him, and the young boy can't believe the things that the slave is saying. It's like neither one of them can picture each other's lives, and it was so delightful. So as far as what I'm currently reading right now, I'm reading a book. I'm right in the middle, like 50% through, with a book called 145th Street by Walter Dean Myers. This is also an anthology, and it all involves everything that's going on 145th Street. None of the stories intertwine. However, some of the characters end up in other stories. So we know that everybody maybe kind of knows everybody else on this street, but it hooked me from the very beginning. The very first story follows a man who wants to have his own funeral while he's still alive. He gets in the casket and everything. He wants to hear the dirt being thrown on the casket. Like, he wants to hear his eulogy. It gripped me from the beginning. So I'm thoroughly enjoying it thus far. Next book I'm in the middle of, well, toward the beginning of, The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is a mystery thriller. I've heard so many amazing things about this book, which is why I decided to buy it. It follows a wedding party, and there's a murder that happens at the wedding. It follows, there are right now 5 different characters: the husband, the wife, the wedding planner, the sister, and I want to say the best friend. So we're following, like, every chapter is a new perspective. So far, so good. I'm sure it'll get better. Like I said, I've heard great things about this book, so I'm still in the beginning stages of reading The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. I'm really enjoying it. I didn't think I would. It's fiction is how it's set up, but there are chapters in the book that are not fiction, where Wilkerson goes into the history of what's really going on at that stage in time, and kind of sets the climate for the laws that are in place or the political climate that's in place. But if it's historical fiction in the fact that we're following 3 fictional characters throughout this book, 2 males and 1 female, and their migration from the south to the north, and kind of what caused this migration to happen. So because it's told in a fictional way but based on true events is why I'm really into this book. It is really good thus far. It's starting off amazing. If you are on Instagram, then you are probably familiar with the fact that everybody is reading Stamped from the Beginning. And there was a discussion that happened on Sunday the 19th that covered the first 260 something pages of this book. I am nowhere near that far, but Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi is basically a nonfiction book telling the history of racism and how it migrated and traveled across the world, not just in America. And there is so much history and so much that I didn't know. You know, I mean, this goes back to Aristotle, you know, and just with some of he's doing an excellent job in setting the stage for how this story of racism has basically transgressed to what it is today. So it's good, but it's dense and it's thick, and you know, it's gonna take a minute to get through. Last book I'm going to talk about is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. And I've never read an Octavia Butler book before, so this is my first. It's good thus far. I'm probably maybe 30% into it, and her world building is amazing. I really have a grasp and a good concept of what time we're in this book, and the setup and the climate, how people are feeling, the fear. Thus far, the story is dragging some, I feel. However, it's still keeping me interested because I still need to know where the main character is going next now that tragedy has struck her family. So I don't have a great idea of exactly what Parable of the Sower is about. It takes place in the not too far, because 2025 is the year, so 5 years from now. But you know, they're living in a state of unease and unrest. They're living in a state where everybody is kind of scavenging and looks dirty and fending for themselves, and if you don't know how to use a gun, I don't know what's, you know, gonna happen to you. You know, it's kind of like this whole every man for himself, but yet you have communities that definitely look out for each other at the same time. The main character has hyper empathy, which means that she can literally feel what's happening to someone else. If they are bleeding, she starts bleeding. Like, it's weird, but it is still interesting and still common enough for me to follow the story. So this video has gotten way too long. That's all the books that I've read and am reading thus far. Thanks for sticking with me if you stuck with me through this long Friday reads. My next video will definitely be a wrap up, and I'll try not to make it this long, try to breeze through the books and their ratings, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and whatever else YouTubers do. Thanks for watching. Bye.